Hello, hello, my Black History book readers. Here we are. We've come to the last Black story, as we would say, last book in this series of books that would have been written or read rather during our Black History Month reading for children, young readers. This is the final book, and I think this book is fitting, being from Texas or living here in Texas for all these years, 46 years, I guess, of living. No, actually, I've lived in Texas for longer than that, but living in Houston for 46 years, I think this book is appropriate for us to end on. And what a wonderful shero that we can celebrate. And it's one that she is one, I believe, that all of us at this point, especially those of us who are of the African diaspora and the descendants of enslaved persons, I think we all know about this one. And I believe it is a good one to add to your library for those young pupils, those young scholars in your life. And this one is really geared towards the younger people. An excellent a book for the children, the younger people, those who are between the toddler age and maybe 10, to add to that early library that you're going to have. Very quick read. It's a very simple read, one that I think you could probably read in 30 minutes and then have a wonderful discussion with your young scholar about. So the book that we're reading, it's coming from a series of books. She Persisted, a number of books that have been written, and this particular one is on Opal Lee, and it is written by Shelia P. Moses. And I think we all know who Opal Lee is. If you're from Texas, then you do. You have to know who she is. If you do not know, then I suggest that you do your research, pick up the book, and make sure you are reading this with your pupil, so that you too can know, because this is one of our living sheroes. This is one of our living historical figures who is very much important for us to know in what it means to persist. That is a good thing to say, that she persisted, and how persistence pays off. Not only does it pay off, but it is infectious. And I think those of us who watched all the work that she did, especially as it came to light on national news, we saw how infectious her persistence was, and the beauty of what it did for our community, as far as Black people, African American people, but also for the community of this nation, that so many people across cultural backgrounds and ethnicity came together to celebrate the accomplishments of Opal Lee. So here we are. We're going to read this book. Not this book. We're not going to read the whole book, but we're just going to read a portion of it. So here we go. The early years, chapter 1. The name opal means precious stone in Sanskrit. It is also the name of a specific type of stone, one that represents truth, purity, and hope. That made it a perfect name for Opal Flake. She was a fearless child who everyone knew was smart and helpful to those around her. After white people burned down her family home on June 19th, 1939, little Opal knew that somehow, one day, she would do something to make the world a better place. She also knew that June 19th was more than just an ordinary day. Chapter 6. The Long Walk. With that mission in mind, Opal and other Texans began talking about making Juneteenth an official state holiday. They wrote letters to politicians and would not take no for an answer. In 1979, a member of the Texas House of Representatives named Albert Eli Edwards worked to make a law in the state that would do just that. It passed, and Juneteenth was declared a state holiday in Texas the following year. Juneteenth would be celebrated as an official holiday for the first time in Texas in 1980. Opal and her friends might have been happy with just that, but they knew it was only the beginning. State after state followed in the steps of Texas to make Juneteenth a state holiday, with a lot of hard work from people who knew how important it was. At the same time, a new movement was brewing, and Opal was front and center. People wanted Juneteenth to become a national holiday. It was important to them that this historic day receive the full recognition and honor it deserved. In the early 90s, Opal decided to join the National Juneteenth Observance Foundation, an organization whose goal was to make Juneteenth a national holiday. As a board member, she worked closely with the founder, Reverend Ronald V. Myers, Sr. His passion and hard work had helped encourage 46 states, plus Washington, D.C., to declare Juneteenth as a state holiday or a day of observance. They wanted to do the same for the country as a whole, not just for individual states, and they all knew they could get it done, even if it meant a lot more hard work. In 1994, Opal made the journey to New Orleans to meet with Reverend Myers and other members of the foundation as they laid out the groundwork for what is now known as the modern Juneteenth movement. Making Juneteenth a national holiday was not going to be easy. As time went by, many gave up, but not Reverend Myers and Opal. Even after Reverend Myers died, Opal's journey continued. She knew it would be done. She knew it could be done, but how? In her 80s now, Opal had been fighting for years, and in 2008, she thought she had found her path forward. Barack Obama was running for president, and if he won, he would become the first black president the United States had ever had. Surely, she thought, Juneteenth will become a national holiday if Obama is elected. So when Opal heard that Obama was going to be in Dallas, she was determined to meet him. With two of her friends pushing her in a wheelchair, Opal made her way to Obama to tell him her vision. The Dallas Morning News snapped a picture of Obama and Opal that spread across the state. After Obama was elected as the 44th President of the United States, Opal began her letter-writing campaign to him and First Lady Michelle Obama. For 8 years, she wrote letters to both requesting a meeting. For 8 years, she asked the same question. Do you know that Juneteenth is a state holiday in 45 states? She asked the First Lady to please tell the President that she would like him to declare Juneteenth a national holiday. Opal continued to press President Obama and other leaders for years, but Juneteenth still had not become a national holiday. In 2016, at the age of 89, Opal knew she had to try something else. She thought back on the history of the Civil Rights Movement, which fought for equal rights for Black people in the U.S. That movement had organized marches in Birmingham, Alabama, Albany, Georgia, and other places in the South, all the way to Washington, D.C., to raise their voices and call attention to their cause. Opal knew that she could make her own version of a march and raise her own voice for the cause along the way. Her goal was not to march 1,600 miles from Texas to Washington, D.C. all at once, but to go to different cities across the country and march 2.5 miles in each city, with the final march in the capital. Opal had just chosen 2.5 miles randomly. The distance was meant to represent the 2.5 years that enslaved people. Opal hadn't, let me say that right, Opal hadn't just chosen 2.5 miles randomly. The distance was meant to represent the 2.5 years that enslaved people in Galveston had been held in bondage after the Emancipation Proclamation was issued. She knew she had to send a message with her marches, and that was a big part of it. Surrounded by family and friends, Opal's journey started at Baker Chapel, African Methodist Episcopal Church in Fort Worth. Would she be able to walk the distance? She put her mind to it and began, and 2.5 miles later, Opal arrived in Joppa, Texas. She had made it. This was just the beginning of Opal's journey, which took her through Texas, Michigan, Nevada, and other states as she repeated the 2.5 mile walks. In 2017, she finally reached Washington, D.C. Though President Obama was no longer in office, Opal's drive to make Juneteenth a national holiday continued. She had lived through 14 presidents. When Opal was born, Calvin Coolidge had been president of the United States. When she started pushing for a state holiday in 1979, Jimmy Carter was president. She had lived long enough to see a black man become president, and for that she was grateful. But for all she had lived to see, she still hadn't seen Juneteenth made into a national holiday. Opal knew there was more to be done. So in 2019, when Opal was 92 years old, she put on her walking shoes once again. And this time, she did even more. In addition to traveling from state to state for her 2.5 mile walks, she started a campaign to gather 1 million signatures to submit to Congress, each one supporting the idea of making Juneteenth a national holiday. She wanted to show just how many people agreed with her and her mission, and she worked with Congresswoman Shelia Lee to write a law in Congress that would make the holiday official nationwide. Opal was more determined than ever to get it done. Even during the COVID-19 pandemic, Opal Lee kept on marching and making calls to the White House and to members of Congress. When people learned what city Opal was traveling to, they would join her as she marched. These marches together became known as Opal's Walk. She also kept collecting signatures to send to Congress, still aiming to get 1 million of them. And young people around the country joined in that effort. Then a huge moment arrived. Producer and rapper icon Sean Diddy Combs joined Opal on social media to tell her that she had reached 1 million signatures. She screamed with laughter, and the word spread. Within days, they were up to 1.5 million signatures, a number that U.S. politicians couldn't possibly ignore. Opal and those fighting alongside her had done it. On June 17th, 2021, 44 years after she had hosted her first Juneteenth celebration in Texas, Opal Lee walked into the White House and stood next to the desk of President Joe Biden. Congresswoman Shelia Lee, her champion in Congress, stood by her side as President Biden signed the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act into law. Juneteenth was now a federal holiday. The next day, people who had never even heard of Juneteenth were chatting about the new federal holiday. They were not only celebrating Juneteenth being a holiday, but they were also celebrating Opal Lee. Opal Lee has survived more in her lifetime than one person should have to endure. She was a teen bride and a maid before becoming an educator, activist, and leader. She worked to feed the hungry and even started a farm in Fort Worth to help more people find ways to eat and be healthy. Opal watched her family home burn down on June 19th, 1939, and 82 years later, she witnessed that day become a national day for freedom. She showed us all how to persist. And here is the picture that they have in the book of her watching the signing. So here is our last book for this series of Black reads or Black stories for our young people. And I think it is so important that we build these libraries for our young people. And as I've said in the other videos, these are not just for Black young people. I think it is so important that we learn about all of the beautiful cultures in our nation. A lot of people say, well, why do we have to learn Black history? Why do we have to learn Native American history? Why do we have to have Asian American History Month and all of these months? Because the truth is, when you look at those history books that we have in our schools, whether we want to call it this or not, it is white history. 99.9% of the pages in our history books only tell the story from one particular perspective, the white perspective. And that is not the truth of our nation. And we do not want our young people, no matter their ethnicity, to grow up believing that our history, the nation's history, is white history. What we're seeing happening in our nation today is largely in part because of the lie that has been told and sold to us over the generations that this country's history is white and everything about it is white. And anything that comes to say, let's celebrate others, it is being demonized. And the question is being asked, well, what about us? What about white people? You are destroying our privilege, our pristine story. And the truth is, American history is anything but white history. It is the story of a collection of people from around the world that came and has made this nation what it is. And so we must work to build, if our schools, our institutions, our nation will not build upon the truth, then it is the responsibility of us who are citizens, who have a heart, who are willing to break against the norms and to learn about ourselves and to learn about all the other individuals that make us who we are as a nation. And so I hope that you can see these videos. There are videos from the previous years where we've shared about books that are about everyday people, as well as our wonderful heroes and sheroes that have made our community great and have contributed to this nation being what it is. And I hope that you can take something away from that, find some books, some ideas to build the libraries of your young people. If not the books that I've shared with you, then check out the books that are in your libraries. And as I said in a previous video, visit those local Black bookstores in your city, support them, buy from them when you can. And I know it's so easy for us to buy from Amazon, but the truth is, how much is Amazon actually giving back to communities of color? How much are they helping our authors, our Black authors, or helping to keep our stories alive in schools, in institutions? Is Amazon giving books away to institutions, community organizations, to churches to help keep the story alive? Probably not. But our small bookstores, our community bookstores, they are safe spaces that are allowing us to come in and to have book clubs, to come in and to share and to learn. They are safe places for not only adults, but also for young people and for children. So visit your local Black bookstore, and for other ethnic communities as well. Buy from them if you know that they have books. Visit their museums. The museum, I know here in Houston, we have the Asian museum. I think it's the Asian Society or something like that. Great resources that we can take advantage of to help ensure that hatred does not survive, that it does not thrive in this country. I hope you've enjoyed these books. If not, I'm sorry. I am up for taking suggestion on other books that you might want me, or other figures that you might want me to see if I can find books on and share them. If you have a book, I would love to read your book. If you have a book that you want me to read, you can send it to me, loan one to me. Um, I would love to read other people's books and share them with other people, so that our young readers can learn, our young scholars can learn about our contributions as a nation. So long until the next time we read a book. I don't know if it'll be this year, but hopefully it will be this year. If not, then if the Lord says the same, 2027, we will hope to be on time with our Black stories, Black history reads for young adults and children. So long. Take care.